Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. This episode, Inspector Clouseau, a candid interview with a home inspector. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help you save time, money, and aggravation. This edition is entitled Inspector Clouseau, a candid interview with a home inspector. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, what you been doing this week?
Hey, Larry, how you doing?
Oh, unbelievable.
Oh, fantastic.
That covers it both ways, by the way.
Yep, great to be back here and doing this podcast this week. I have done some work over at a neighbor's house, and I want to describe it as wood rot, of course, and figuring out some hardwood floor issues. So I will keep everybody informed of that. That sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, tonzo. So let me ask you a question. Are these people getting their house ready to sell?
They are. That is really the goal that they're after right now. Why do you ask?
Well, it's absolutely a perfect lead-in to our discussion with our friend Chris Kennedy, who is a home inspector here in the North Atlanta area. And we pre-recorded this. And folks, we want to just say, and a candid discussion with a home inspector, how you can use it both to sell your house, to actually find out what's wrong when you sell the house, plus when you buy a new house, you have a great list. So here it is. This week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show, we're interviewing a home inspector. We feel this can bring some value to our listeners. Hey, John, who are we talking to today?
Hey, Larry. Yes, today we're going to be talking with Chris Kennedy of Kennedy Home Inspection here outside of North Atlanta. And Chris, welcome to the show. We really appreciate coming on the show and spending a little time with us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate being on this side of the podcast. I'm usually just a listener.
Awesome. So at least you know what a podcast is. It's a start, right? So give us a little bit of your background, Chris. Tell us how'd you get into home inspection? A little bit about the qualifications. Tell us a little bit about being a home inspector.
And also, what is a home inspector too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I kind of guess it goes all the way back to when I bought my first house as a young 30-something by myself, and I kind of followed the home inspection person around my house just because I was curious what they do and how they do it, and just kind of in the back of my mind, I'd always taken an interest in that. But I went the IT route, so I working for the man, so to speak. And then when all of a sudden I realized I was going to have two kids in college at the same time and I probably should bring in a little extra money, decided to do this. And so I went and got certified and did all the normal things you have to do to start a real legitimate business, and got all the legal pieces of it in place. And after I got certified, I actually went around to a lot of my friends and neighbors to do free home inspections, just so that I could come up with a process that I was comfortable with and get my confidence up before I actually went to a real paying customer.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So you you developed process, as they say, you developed business process before you actually got paid for it.
That's right. I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of things to consider when you're doing an inspection on a property. And in my opinion, if you don't have a process in place, you're probably going to walk away and miss something. So I'm very methodical in how I approach it. Literally, when I put my foot outside the truck, I'm following my process until I leave.
Awesome. So explain. So John asked that question. So what is a home inspection, and what do you actually do, and what is the purpose of the home inspection? What are those things? So start with purpose. What's the purpose? Who hires you? Are they buyers or sellers? Are they what is the process there?
Right. So it's both, to put it in one word, but I would say that it's more 90%, if not higher, people who are buying houses. They want to make a good decision because they're getting ready to spend a lot of money. And so they want to make sure that what they're buying is is in good shape and everything works and there are no safety problems or major, things that are going to cause them to spend a lot of money down the road. And then, the other 10% or so of the people that hire me because they're going to put their house on the market. But when people call me for a pre-listing inspection, I give them a choice. I said, I can do a pre-listing inspection, which is basically about a 2-hour walk through with the seller with no written report. They take notes. And what I do is I point out the things that a home inspector should find. But I give them a choice. They can either do that, which is significantly cheaper than a full inspection, or they can go ahead and do a full inspection.
Awesome.
Nice.
So just on a full inspection, you cover everything in the house. Is that correct? Do you do property also? Tell us a little bit about what the home inspect, like does it start at the street or does it start at the door of the house?
Yeah. So, that kind of goes into my process. So the first thing I do is I walk completely around the house. I look at the lay of the land. I look at the driveway. I imagine what rainwater would do if it was raining by looking at the roof lines, all the hips and valleys on the roof, and where's all that water funneled, and then what does that water do once it reaches the ground? Does it stay next to the house, or is it funneled away? Those kinds of things. So it literally starts the minute you get out of the truck, and then of course I'm looking at the actual components of the house. What are the exterior, the cladding? Is it brick? Is it siding? Does it have rotten wood around the windows and so forth? So you look at and so that is part of my process. So I look at the exterior first. Then when I move to the inside, I start with the attic and then work my way down to the basement or the crawl space, whatever they have.
Hey, Chris, but is there some things that you don't look at? I mean, it's not that you don't want to, but it's just kind of out of your scope.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for instance, a pool or a hot tub or a dock, if it's a lake house, I will go in and look at the components of an electrical panel. But beyond the panel and beyond the things that I can see, those are beyond my scope. I can only tell you about the things that I see, if that makes sense. But yeah, so no pools, no spas, no steam rooms, things like that.
What if somebody has a septic system and things like that? Is that somebody different or is that you?
Well, I'll certainly point out the fact that they have it. And that they need to, before they get the house, before they buy the house, rather, they need to know when it was last inspected. So if it has not been inspected or serviced within the last couple of years, I always tell my clients to either have that done or get the paperwork from the last time it was done.
Yeah, and that's on septic. Do you do anything with sewer?
No, I don't. But so my report will tell you whether you're on septic or sewer, but it doesn't go much further than that.
Okay. Yeah. Are there other things like that so we in our world in the handyman world we call those like major systems, right? So there's the septic system, there's the HVAC system, there is the electrical system. Are you in depth on those systems or not? Like, do you actually put gauges on the HVAC system or not?
I do not, but what I do is I run both the heat and air. I'll take the temperature readings, and there's an acceptable level of difference between your baseline and the coldest point you can record, and the baseline between the hottest point you can record. So things like that can be good indicators on whether or not a system is doing its job or not. And of course, look at the date. I'll give them the exact age of the systems, and there's always an average life expectancy with your systems. So that's basically what I'm telling the customer.
Yeah, and we do the same thing, actually. It's kind of funny you talk about average ages. Like we get into things where people come in and, I know I have anyway, and I know John's had some of the same thing, but somebody will come in and say, can you fix my dryer? And I look at it and I go, it's 15 years old. yes, I might be able to fix it, but it's it's just you might as well just replace it because it's probably going to cost more to fix it, and then the next thing's going to break, and just it's time to move on. So,
yeah,
Chris,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, just from a handyman's perspective, are you recording like the type of appliances and the age of those appliances?
Absolutely. So on an HVAC, for instance, I'll give them model number, serial number, the manufacturer, the age, the BTUs, all that good information, and then obviously I'm going to tell them where the age lies in relation to their average life expectancy. Because what I tell people, if I find something that is well beyond the life expectancy, I don't tell them they need to replace it. I would never tell somebody to replace it. What I would tell them is to budget for a new one because it's a good possibility you'd have to replace it in the near future.
Yeah, well, that's because you see it in a different light than we do because they're calling us to fix it usually. At least that's been my experience,
Yeah, that's why I was kind of asking that.
So,
I guess, so you're going through the house. You're describing, looking at all these systems and things. Is there some real showstoppers that you see, or what those might be? Like this is absolutely has to be fixed before anything further goes through with any transactions.
Yeah, I guess that might be. Tell us your process, or do you have a reporting system that shows different levels of concern? I guess I want to say.
Well, I do have a reporting system, but as far as showstoppers go, I think one of the biggest ones here in the Atlanta area, if I'm doing a house that was built around the 80s, a little bit before, a little bit after, I'm still running into polybutylene pipes, and in some cases I've seen where things I literally see active leaks with polybutylene pipes. But if I see that's a huge red flag, and that's something that they need to negotiate.
So just a quick aside for our listeners that don't know what polybutylene pipe is, at least here in the greater Atlanta area, probably in the late 80s and some into the early 90s, they installed this pipe called polybutylene pipe. It has a failure rate that's incredibly high, and most of the time it bursts, and when it bursts it tends to flood houses or flood your yard, depending. A lot of it was run for service lines into the house. We would call it highly problematic, I guess, so people
absolutely
understand. Yeah. So.
Yeah, over time that pipe gets loses less and less of its rigidity, I guess you would say. It becomes very brittle, and so you combine that pressure with the brittleness, and it's doomed to fail.
Yes. So that's So you see polybutylene. Are there any other things that are like? But when you put that on a report, right? I've seen your reports, so I know what they look like. You have if you in your reporting, you say highly recommended to repair. Some of your reports have a little safety symbol next to them, like this is a safety concern. Explain that a little bit to our listeners.
Yeah, so you have different categories whenever I have a concern. So it could be a very minor thing where it literally just needs somebody with a screwdriver to tighten something, for instance. Or it could be a safety concern where, and I saw this recently, where there's a very DIY deck on the back of a house. They didn't have any railings on the stairs. And that would have the safety, the red cross, like you said, Larry.
Yep.
And then other things, it's just maintenance, where you have peeling paint. Not that I go around looking for cosmetic issues, but if you have enough peeling paint and then your bare wood is out there next to the elements, then obviously that's an issue. The other red flags, though, is when you see, big cracks in retaining walls or foundations or the concrete slabs. I've seen concrete slabs with big, wide cracks where you can tell the water's been in and things like that.
Oh, are you saying sinkholes? Is that what you're saying?
Not quite. Almost.
Well, it's funny that you talk a lot about maintenance because here, both John and I are big on maintenance and on keeping houses up. Because John, what's one of our biggest areas of work that we do? And it goes to the paint, right? It goes to paint.
That would be wood rot.
Wood rot. Yeah. Yep.
it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, we always kind of laugh. It's like, gee, if you had taken care of this 20 years ago, you wouldn't have this problem right now. Or if you had actually been taking it care of on a regular basis, you wouldn't have this problem right now. But
if I'm expecting a house that's over 10 years old, I expect to see some wood rot somewhere. It's just
sure.
Yeah.
So we have determined, though, that this is largely we believe this to be an issue in the Southeast more than elsewhere. I don't see this when I go out west, and I grew up in the Northeast, and we rarely had wood rot in the Northeast. Very, very rare. Here, it's everywhere. Wow, right. Crazy. Right. So.
Well, you've heard the old saying, eventually water always wins, and it's so true here in the South. And another showstopper, if you will, John, that you were talking about is certain types of siding. The hardwood siding is good. The hardy plank siding, what's made out of cement, is good, but the composite ones are absolute trash. If they're not taken care of, they're like a sponge, and they're doomed to fail as well.
Yeah. We I know John and I do repairs.
I had that on my house, and I've been replacing it with hardy plank.
Yeah. We do so much repair on siding for just that issue, and it's mostly the low boards down towards the bottom where the water splashes on it, and then it doesn't get caulked up underneath it well. But it sometimes makes me think, and this is probably a topic for another show, but we really don't understand why anybody would build with certain products, and yet we see it all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
So, and materials, as you know, Chris, because you're kind of handy, we know you're a pretty handy guy, that, materials really aren't the expense, it's the labor to put it up. So you might as well spend the few extra pennies and put up a good product versus a poorer quality product, just to save a dime here and a dime there. So anyway, that's a little aside. That's a little aside. So so you've kind of told us about some recent jobs. Do you have a funny story or maybe a horror story from a job? Either way, just a recent job that you kind of go in and go like, wow, or you just have a story where, I don't know, you turn the corner and there's a horse standing there in somebody's house or something like that. Is there a story like that you could tell us?
Because Larry's got a lot of stories about horses inside, right?
Well, I'm just saying, who knows? John, you know this. We go into all these houses, right? And you walk into these houses, and you don't really know the people, you don't know what to expect. It is
crazy.
Sometimes it's crazy. And so we know you have similar experiences because you go into all these different people's houses all the time and do the same thing. I'll give you a short one, and Chris, you'll kind of appreciate this. So we were doing a bathroom demo the other day, right? And I flipped. We're ripping out a house that built this bathroom was built in 1960. The house was built in 1960, and it's all poured concrete and lath, right? Anyway, we pull the lath up from the floor, and there in the bottom of the floor in the concrete is a pack of Lucky Strikes. And all I said to the guy I was with is, some things never change. Even back in the 50s, these guys were throwing their trash inside people's houses, and I was just like, what the heck, right? So tell us a story. It doesn't have to be funny, but just some kind of story like that. I know you've got one. You've got to have at least one. We've got dozens of them. So,
I haven't yet run into any horses in houses, but I do. I mean, something. I'm just constantly amazed sometimes at the condition of the houses when I go inside of them. They look great from the outside, and the minute you walk in, you realize that these people, the ones that are selling, I should say, they just don't keep their houses up. They're sometimes they're filthy, sometimes just everything is broken. But I did do this one house, if you know where Big Canoe is.
Yes.
So I'm in Big Canoe, and I kind of have to set the setting here for you to understand this. But it was here in Atlanta. You can and away from Big Canoe, where the elevation is a little bit lower, you can have a nice sunny day. But then the minute you go up the side of the mountain there in Big Canoe, it can be a totally different climate, it seems like. And so I pull up to this house. It was a sunny day when I left my house. I pull up to this house to do the inspection, and I was already pre-warned that this house was in a less than desirable state, you should say. And there's this constant 25-mile-an-hour wind blowing the clouds through. So we're up high in the mountain. And I look at the house, and all the windows are open. And it just kind of looks like it's been in shambles. And the first thing I do is when I go in the door will only open about 2 feet because the hardwoods have buckled.
Ooh.
when I finally get my way into this house, and first of all, you have to know Big Canoe's a nice community. It's gated. The houses are really nice. It's you would not. I will only expect to see really good things in Big Canoe.
It's like the Addams family there.
Well, you know what? It really was kind of like that. And so when I get into the house and when I walked into the kitchen, I felt like maybe I had just missed some squatters by about 30 minutes. The oven was on. Well, I know I hadn't, but the refrigerator was unplugged but full of rotting food.
Oh.
There were 2-liter bottles on the counter and dishes in the sink, and there were mouse trails on the floor. And when I went from room to room, I literally, I'm not kidding when I say that I thought if I'm ever going to find a body, it's probably going to be in this house.
Oh, that sounds like a fun job.
Yeah.
Hence, yeah. Hence, you turned from home inspector to coroner.
Exactly. It was surreal though. Beds were overturned. There was mold on surfaces where you wouldn't expect to see it. It was quite bizarre.
Yeah,
Whoa.
that's an interesting story. Yeah, that's an interesting story. So I want to get back. I just wanted to ask one quick question. I wanted you to actually pitch me on, quote, pitch me. I want to know why should I do a home inspection before I'm buying? So if I'm selling my house, I just want you to tell me why. And that house actually brings up a whole bunch of things. It sounds like, was that the seller or the buyer that was doing that one? Do you remember?
On which one? The Big Canoe?
The Big Canoe.
Yes.
One.
That was the person that was going to buy it and probably flip it.
Oh, okay. So flip. Yeah. He had an idea that that's what it looked like beforehand. But if I'm going to sell my house, because you said most of your people are buyers, right? So they're buying the house and they want to make sure that it's going. But make the case for doing it before. Because John and I, we try to be really proactive. Like we talk a lot about maintenance and stuff. But tell us like why they should have you come in and give, and even just that walkthrough. Even if it's just the walkthrough portion where you don't give them the full receipt, but give them the value on that one. What's that worth to somebody?
Almost every time somebody calls me to do a pre-listing inspection, they say, I just want a to-do list. I want to know what I can do to make my house present better and possibly sell for more money. And so I'll do a full inspection if people want a full inspection, but I'm always cautious, and I tell people whether I'm doing the short one with just a walkthrough or the full one with the full written report, I say, please consult somebody, either your agent or somebody in the industry, before you go spend a ton of money, because it's not always a necessary thing to do. And so that's basically what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay. So it's worthwhile. What do I want to say? So you can get a good ROI on that. John and I, we always talk about it, in the real estate side. We just see that, number one, like both of us, neither of us will choose paint colors because, A, you can't ever match anything, and B, I am no decorator, right? So it's like, and I've learned over the years, that guess what? Wife makes the decisions, whatever she says goes, but I don't know that I watch people go in on real estate deals and they want to change everything. John has a famous story about the carpet story, which, John, tell that story real quick.
Yeah, so we were just talking about that, and my neighbor changed out his carpet to sell the house, and I asked him, I said, "Why are you doing that?" I mean, it doesn't matter, because my theory is that no matter what you do, I'm not going to like. Okay, me being anybody else, and sure enough, 2 days later, after they put $5,000 into it, the new owners just threw it out.
Yeah.
And I understand that a lot of people want to do some big remodels and things like that to sell their home.
Right.
But we talked about this just before the show. We can revisit it, but it's just not
it's not necessarily a wise
it's not a necessary
thing,
and I think you're better off kind of negotiating out. And I know, Chris, earlier you were talking about you're not really looking for aesthetics as much as the maintenance issues. But
they want to make sure everything works. They want to make sure they're not going to put a foot through a floor.
Exactly.
Their foundation's not going to blow out in the next couple of years after they buy their house. So almost everybody that gets a house these days gets a 1-year warranty on their major systems. But they just want to know that they're not going to have to spend a lot of money, within the next month or 2 months or year, whatever it is.
Right.
So, and then also, You'll find this interesting. So we did replace the carpet in our house not too long ago. It was enough years had gone by, and there was enough wear, and we figured out we needed to do that. And we met up with a guy, and he was a nice salesman, and he said he set the bar right off the bat. He said, "You two need to agree on the color because I'm not a marriage counselor."
Well,
yeah. Words to the wise.
Words to the wise. And I tell people that. They say, "Oh, I'm thinking about remodeling the house." I go, "Are you going to live there?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "You're going to have counseling?"
So Chris, I have a question of, so you've got a couple of different products that you offer. One's the pre-home, and then there's the actual, full inspection.
Right.
When you go out on, maybe you can tell the listeners exactly, what can they expect? What can somebody expect if they just call you out to do the pre-inspection one to get like kind of the punch list versus the other one? How long is it? How, those kind of things.
And then a corollary. So too, this is just an additional question is like, so there's like is there a base service, and then do you do like radon testing, or are there any auxiliary services that maybe you choose for? And what's common in the industry? Because we reach a pretty broad market. So, I know in certain areas, like state laws are different in different places. And I know you have some experience because when you get certified, they generally talk to you about the various different state regulations. But tell us a little bit about that as well while you're at it.
Sure. So the two main services would be, like we said, the pre-listing inspection and then the full inspection. And the pre-listing inspection, I just have a set price. And it's really more of a conversation more than anything. We walk around the house, the homeowner's taking notes. I'll tell them the age of their systems, and I'm really what I'm looking for is to point out the things that an eventual inspector should find. So that comes at a much cheaper rate, depending on the size of the house, anywhere from $125 to $150. But it's just it's a conversation, is what it is. And then the full inspection, I base my price essentially on two things: square footage and the age of the house. You would think that a brand new home would be an easy inspection because there shouldn't be anything to find, right? In theory, that's true. But if it's a 6,000 square foot home, it's going to take me a little while to get through that. But on average, I would say that my houses that I'm inspecting in this area are generally in the 2,500 to 4,000 square foot range. And they're, I don't know, they're, 20 years or newer, something like that. So my price range is somewhere around the $350 to $450, depending on some of those factors. But with the full report, or with the full inspection, you get a full written report. So that's one of the big differentiators. And then I partner up with a company to do radon. I basically don't make any money off of that. I just pass that cost through. And I have another company do that, but I can bill for it. It's $150. Takes a couple of days to do that. As a part of my normal inspection, I will take a drone up and I will give them an aerial view of their house, of their entire property. And then I'll go up a couple of 100 feet, if not higher, and just do a kind of a 360 panoramic video that I put on my report as a link. So they can go and kind of see, and kind of going back to that big canoe, that example, the people wanted to see, what's my view going to look like in the wintertime? Because this was during the summertime with the leaves on the tree. So I took the drone up and I can show them what mountains they're going to see and hillsides and so forth. But I do that. I do the drone work as complimentary service on every full inspection. And of course, if I can't get on the roof because it's too high or too steep or whatever, then I'm very dependent on the drone to go look for what shape the roof is in.
Yeah, is that typical in the industry or not?
I think it's becoming more and more typical, and real estate agents that I talk to expect it more and more. And I'll tell you guys, one thing that I do not do, and I would caution people on, is the value of thermal imaging. Anybody can go out there on Amazon and pick up a thermal imaging camera, and they range anywhere from $150 to $3,000. And the funny thing about that is, if somebody tells you that they can give you efficiency information or something like that from a thermal imaging, see if they're certified. Because most people think they know what they're looking at on thermal imaging, but there's a good chance they don't unless they've had classes and they've had some sort of certification in that.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah, and I know this just here in Georgia anyway. You can call Georgia Power if you have Georgia Power, and they'll do that for you for free because they're going to look at having you insulate things and things like that. So you need to ask around on that one instead of paying for it. So, but that's a great tip. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that question every now and then, and basically what I tell people is I'm leaving the thermal imaging to the experts like Georgia Power, and so no, I do not do that.
Like Larry was saying earlier, that the show's all about saving time, money, and aggravation and things. One of the things is what is some of the major things that people can avoid. I don't know if we addressed this earlier in home ownership.
Yeah, what do you see regularly?
That is kind of missed and glossed over.
Because we'll compare notes is what it boils down to. Like we see a lot of things that we just sort of go, wow, we sort of scratch our heads. What do you see on a regular basis that's something that's easily avoidable, right? We use wood rot a lot because we do a lot of wood rot repair, and what we get aggravated with is when a painter comes in and he puts in a layer of just regular painter's caulk over the top and paints it, and the people go, oh, it's fixed, and it's not, because a year later it's cracked and it's back into the rotten wood. So what do you see on a regular basis?
What I see on almost every house that is 10 years old or older is I see the original water heater. And when you look at the water heater from the outside, it looks all nice and shiny. It's still giving you hot water. So why do anything about it? But if you're over 10 years on a water heater, you're on borrowed time. And if your water heater is in a finished basement,
watch out.
Watch out. If it's in a garage, that's different. Who cares if you flood a garage, right? But, the last thing you want to do is come home from vacation and
That's right.
Get your socks wet when you walk in the door.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because we've discussed that. We discuss those kinds of things quite often, and we actually are in the process of writing up an anticipated age of appliances, and the water heater being the first one. And most people don't even know that there's actually a maintenance process that you're supposed to do every year, which is drain the bottom quarter of your tank out, and nobody does it, right? Nobody does it. So
I guess the other question, Chris, is that when you look at like laundry rooms, it's the hoses going to the washer. That's the one thing I see all the time, that people don't change those hoses out to, like braided hoses or anything like that. They might be those old hoses, and those things pop a lot.
They do. And the other thing I look for in a laundry room is what is the vent pipe that's going through the wall for the dryer. If it's like a B vent that doesn't have any it's like it's not accordion style, if that makes sense.
Yes.
What you'll see is some people will save money, builders will save money, and they'll put that accordion stuff right in the wall, the corrugated, I should say, right in the wall leading to the outside. And all that is a lint trap and a safety hazard because, that can catch fire.
Right.
Awesome. John, do we have any other questions?
No, I don't. Not for this segment. Chris, I really appreciate you, taking the time to spend with us here at the Handyman Pros Radio Show.
And so our last question is, Chris, how can people get a hold of you, and what areas do you do your service?
Absolutely. And so thanks for letting me participate. This was fun. I hope to be on again. I have a website. It is www.kennedy-hi.com. I will go just about anywhere around if you draw a line around Cumming, I'll go out pretty far. I've gone down as far as the airport. I go up into the mountains. So I will go wherever the work is.
So that's perfect. That's
all over
perfect.
Atlanta, basically, is what you're describing.
Because we've got a lot of listeners here in the North Georgia area. So hopefully all you folks will ping Chris's website and get Chris out there to give you some help.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you letting me be on the show.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.